Hi, friends. I'm so excited to talk to you today about the Physicians National Interest Waiver. I think this is something that's not talked about enough, particularly in the context of if you have DACA and you've graduated from medical school and maybe it's time for you to do your residency. Anyway, you're a physician now and you're wanting to figure out how to petition for yourself or have an employer petition for you. I want to bring the National Interest Waiver to your attention because it could be something that is the key to you getting your residency, and it's not necessarily because an employer is petitioning for you, and it's definitely not through marriage, and so these could be options that you really like. First, let me set the scene on what the normal employment-based process looks like. Usually, this is the process that's called PERM. It's where we're making sure the U.S. government is making sure that there's not a labor issue where we're hiring foreign talent when American talent is here and ready and willing and capable and qualified to do the job. And here we're accidentally overhiring foreign talent. That is the PERM process. And it is because an employer is petitioning for you. And you may know that this process usually takes a couple of years. About 2 years minimum is the PERM process in most situations. And so that means you have to work with this employer for quite a long amount of time. And that's totally fine. But it does mean if you're a physician and you need to move around because of residency or because you're going to this other hospital to start doing research at that hospital, it's very difficult for you to stay long-term sometimes at a specific hospital where you're definitely going to work for them until you get your green card through the PERM process. And that's why I want to bring to your attention that you could bypass that whole process through something called a Physicians National Interest Waiver. Now, there are 2 types of national interest waivers, and each kind of has a similar test that USCIS runs on it, but one that is very specific to physicians that I like is because there's no discretion allowed. You either check the boxes and you meet the requirements and therefore mandatory approval, or you don't meet the requirements and you're denied. But you could always apply through the other type of national interest waiver that's for everyone, not just for physicians. So I like the mandatory nature of if I know that I check these boxes for you, if I know I satisfy these requirements, and they're pretty straightforward requirements, I know what ought to be on the other side of this application, and that should be an approval for you. After you get the approval, you do have to wait for your green card visa to become current, which if you're from Mexico right now, that's taking about 2 years for the second preference green card applications. So if you're from Mexico, it's 2 years. Other countries can also take various amounts of time, but that is also a factor here, but it's not a huge factor. 2 years for your wait is not so bad because it's not that different. If your employer were to petition for you, you'd probably get about the same wait, but you don't have to deal with the whole labor certification process. So what does the National Interest Waiver for physicians require? Well, first, it requires you to be a physician. It also requires you to work full-time in a clinical practice for 5 years. So this, you can work from one clinical practice to another and kind of like aggregate your time together, but that does complicate things, which is why residency is a really good time where you're somewhere that you're going to be for quite a while. That's a really good time to start this process. So if you've just graduated from medical school and now, you're going through and your next steps are going to be residency and you're going to be at that hospital for a while, this is the perfect time to start. So you need to be there for 5 years. But here's something else. You also need to be in a very specific area that you're working. So it has to be a health professional shortage area. It has to be a mental health professional area if you're a psychiatrist. It needs to be a medically underserved area, a veterans affairs facility, or a physician scarcity area, depending on, if you are a specialty physician. So how do we know what these things are? There's government websites for each of these that list the specific employing agency, so the specific hospitals or specific places. So you would just Google health professional shortage area. You can put in the state and the county, and it gives you a whole list of all of the hospitals, all of the different providers that are considered in the health professional shortage, the specific health professional shortage area. So it's super cool. We have to check this box. And once we check the box, we're good to go. We also have to provide a letter from a federal agency or a state Department of Health that says that they know about your qualifications and that your work in your state, in this area, is in the public interest. They don't need to say why, et cetera, et cetera. They just have to state that you and your work, and they know your qualifications, they've reviewed your CV, you working in this area is in the public interest. Once we have those things, we should, there's no discretion here. They can't be like, I don't necessarily agree with this state agency that wrote this letter. And that's again why I love the predictability of a Physician National Interest Waiver. It is very specific to physicians, so there are carve-outs that don't apply. So, for example, a chiropractor is not included for the Physician National Interest Waiver, but a chiropractor may qualify for a regular National Interest Waiver, just not for a physician one, for example. And an optometrist also falls in that same category. So if this is something that you're interested in, I encourage you to reach out to me. I love Physician National Interest Waivers and really believe that they can not only transform your life, but I'm so grateful that you're here in this country, that you're wanting to work in one of these areas that have been already designated as a shortage area. We need you. And I'm so thankful that you're here helping take care of us, and would love to be able to help you get your green card through this process by starting first with a national interest waiver for physicians. And then, God willing, after that's approved, then we go for your green card when your visa is current. If you'd like to visit more about this, reach out to me. And if you have a physician friend who perhaps has DACA, for example, please share, because sharing is caring. See you later.